Welcome back to the Midtown Madness podcast. It's your hosts, Zach Miller and Pete Hale. We're going to try to bring the energy today. I know it was a little tempered by the Friday night activities of the men's basketball team, but we're here. We love our Billikens athletics, and we're here to talk about it. So, Pete, how are you doing on this Sunday?
I'm good, Zach, as well as I can be. Less than 2 days removed from that game, but I'm doing all right. How about you?
Yeah, I think it's funny. Today I put on this pullover to record. I like to wear something Billikens when I record, but yesterday I made a point to not to emotionally separate myself from kind of Billiken in general. I don't think I watched the end of the Dayton game on Saturday and then, rewatched it this morning for the podcast, the women's Dayton game. But I kind of didn't watch the baseball, the volleyball. I just kind of let it all go and figured I would revisit it in the morning today, which was nice. I got to emotionally kind of detach for a minute and remind myself that there's more important things in life. So, because after that kind of game, it just puts you in such a shit mood,
Yeah.
But we got a lot to talk about today. We got some great questions about and topics from our friends and listeners out there. But we're gonna start off, and this is I want to thank Kevin, for the suggestions and everybody who's given us suggestions because. This is a process we're working on. I've never run. I haven't been the brains, the technical brains behind a podcast. Peter's new to it. He does amazing over there. But, we're both new to these different roles, I guess. So it's a process. So I want to thank everybody for the feedback that has been given to us. In this episode, obviously, we're going to talk about that Dayton game. We're going to talk some women's hoops. We had Noah Goldberg from ESPN Richmond on, and he was amazing. He gave us some insight into the COVID drama that happened earlier this season, and we look forward to the Richmond game as well as he gave us a little insight on VCU, which was pretty awesome. We also have a women's soccer game to talk about, but we're going to really try to focus more on men's and men's basketball and then women's basketball, just based on the feedback we've been given by our generous listeners. Start off the Billiken men's basketball team. Obviously, you guys all watched it. If you're listening to this well, first of all, let's talk about the big news in the A10. The men's basketball tournament has been moved from the 3rd to the 6th. The preliminary rounds will be held in Richmond, Virginia. They have essentially swapped the men's and women's basketball tournament. Men's will be 3rd through the 6th of March in Virginia, and then the final March 14th at UD Arena, we'll talk about that. And then the women will be playing at VCU the 10th through the 14th. Peter, give me your initial reaction to this news.
My initial reaction was confusion. I wasn't sure that I was reading everything right because there was a lot that came with it at once. It wasn't just, hey, we're taking the tournament and we're moving it up a whole weekend.
I really questioned my intelligence reading everything about like the seating and the location. I just start questioning how dumb I am.
Yeah, it was so surprising. And not only that, to then say, well, the final is still going to be on the 14th, but we're moving it to Dayton for whatever reason. And then not only that, but we're going to switch up all of the last weekend games of the year. So SLU's game against George Mason is now out, and instead we play UMass on the 28th to finish the regular season. So there was a lot to process all at once in this, and I'm still not sure that I completely understand all of the moves. When we were talking to Sully a few days ago, we talked about the possibilities of what the A10 might do with that free week between the end of the regular season and the A10 tournament. Well, it turns out they just got rid of it, moved up the tournament, and then I don't want to say stack the deck, but they definitely gave their top seeds a chance to have some more quality wins.
They really tried, Billikens. They tried to help you out.
Yeah.
And you throw a middle finger at them. Way to go. No.
Yeah, and I know not everyone was happy about that, because the other big part of this was they said their tournament seeding process would go away from just pure records for every team, and that if you played fewer than 60% of your scheduled A10 games, they would just base it on your net ranking. And this was clearly to help out a team like SLU that has not played the full slate of games, but has had at the time a very good net ranking. I think we were number 32 going into the Dayton game. So I know Bonaventure was not there. That program, their fans were not happy at all about the changes. There were some other winners and losers in the whole thing, but it was a lot to take in all at once. And we'll see how it all plays out.
Now, I don't know did we cover? I think we covered the UMass pause in our last episode. But there's been some update to that, correct?
The pause in terms of their campus shutting down, and therefore all their programs had to shut down?
Yes. So basically, I believe, and I forgot to even put this in our notes, and I apologize to Pete for putting him under the bus like this. But even through a quick Google, nothing really came up. But I'm not quoting this. I'm doing this from memory. Basically, there will be no on-campus competition, interscholastic or intercollegiate competition on UMass's campus until mid-March. Now, these sports teams are allowed to practice on campus, but they must play off campus. So it seems like UMass men's and women's basketball will be allowed to finish their seasons, but they only will get to play road games.
Yeah, it's kind of a loophole. They had a game, their game that was on campus with St. Bonaventure was canceled, but they've still got games at Richmond on the 23rd and now at SLU on the 28th on the schedule. And that will get them to 10 conference games, and it gets them just barely to the 13 games that they need for postseason consideration, because right now they're 7-4 overall. They've only played 11 games. It does give them a loophole.
Yeah, and another program in the Atlantic 10, Fordham still shut down. I don't believe there is an update on that. That's concerning more for their women's side of things, because the women's program currently sits at second in the Atlantic 10 behind St. Louis. So yeah. It's really up in the air for them, and it's a shame for these young men and women, because they've worked so damn hard.
I don't know if it's a shame for their men's team. Quite. I mean, it might be it might be a mercy rule for the men's team, but for the women's team, their coaches and players and fans actually have petitioned the school. I think so far to no avail, but I would like to see them get kind of the same loophole that UMass has. Like, even if campus is shut down, maybe if as long as we're still not generating any positive tests around the program, we can play some road games.
And I don't want to move into the general. I don't even want to call it politics, because everyone uses politics as like a blanket word for current events. But like current events wise, it's interesting to see how the situation has changed for athletics, where we've realized that maybe athletics aren't the reason this is spread, because the people that have come back, and had to pause their program, it doesn't seem like the positive tests have come from the actual competitions.
Right.
And it feels like almost that when it comes to things that could spread the virus, having limited fans in the arena really seems pretty much the safer option than like going to a bar. Yeah, because you can control where you sit. You have an assigned spot. You can make sure people. It's funny. Like, we shut down all sports, but it almost feels like the sports weren't like we can do sports. It's not that big of a huge ordeal.
Yeah, I don't disagree with keeping it to a limited amount of fans that you can spread out and keep people in masks. And it seems like the people,
I think we're all
right, who are getting to go to the games are happy to comply with the basic regulations just to get back in the arena.
Sure.
my initial, feeling about it going into the season was just don't even worry about fans.
Yep.
And that's still my perspective.
I still feel that way. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I think when push comes to shove, if you got to get the games in, get the games in.
Right.
Fans can, figure it out. It's not a huge deal.
Right. But it seems like on a limited basis, it's been fine so far, and that the main concerns have just come from, what's either happened on campus or as players go home or go out socially or things like that. But in terms of the competition itself, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of spread that way.
Yeah, no, it does not at all. But let's get off the current events and the brand new news in the A10. And let's look at the LaSalle game. Billikens obviously took care of business prior to the Dayton game against LaSalle. This was a good game for the Billikens to come out. It's a home game. You beat LaSalle 78-57. A game you're supposed to win. You come out and get revenge. What did you see? What stood out to you most in this game?
So when we talked with the OnlyFans guys heading into the game, one of the keys to the game that we all agreed on was keeping their shooters in check. Last time we played at LaSalle and they beat us, Beatty from off the bench went off. I think he had 20 against us. And then you always have to watch out for Kenny and Clark, who had a great game against us in that first game. Those guys lately have they've been shooting collectively about 20 3-pointers a game. So the key to the game, as I saw it, was really getting to those guys on the perimeter. And to SLU's credit, we did. In that 4-game win streak, just played outstanding perimeter defense. LaSalle goes 5 for 28 as a team. The 3 guys that I was kind of worried about, Clark, Kenny, and Beatty, I think went a collective 2 for 12 from the 3-point line, or 2 for 11. Brickus had a big game. He had 22 points. He was only 2 of 9 from 3, but he was getting to the rim. He's a good young guard for them. So he had a big game, but everybody else we really did a great job shutting LaSalle down in the ways that we did not the first time around. So that was just great to see.
Yeah, I think I've become a Jameer Brickus fan. I honestly the funny thing is I sit there and there's people around me that it's cool because with the fans, I actually got to sit near my late uncle's friends. They sat right behind me. Bo Pamatot, who we had on the other podcast, and I went to Brooklyn with, sat in the section over within popcorn throwing distance, and then another guy, Jake, he sat a couple more rows behind me than my uncle's friends. So it's cool that you get to interact 6 feet apart. But there were moments where it's funny because you got to sit back and watch that game and just shake your head at some of the things Billikens were doing. But you also, what's great about the game where the Billikens are just running away with it is that you get to sit back and enjoy what the other team is doing.
Yeah.
And Jameer Brickus was fun to watch in that game. As much as I shook my head at the things that Javonte Perkins was doing in that game as far as scoring wise, Jameer Brickus was doing just the same thing. And you would just sit back and go, okay, whatever. If he's going to do that, I don't know how you stop that. So Jameer Brickus was incredibly impressive, but equally impressive though in that game, I thought, like you said, was the 3-point defense. In the first half, they shot 7.7% from 3, and in the second, 26.67%, 4 of 15, for a combined total of 17.95 of 28. The hilarious part of that whole game was LaSalle at the line. I don't know if you kept track of this during the game, but they were, I believe they were 0 of 6, and then they made 2 in a row.
Yeah, well, I think they ended 2 of 6. I think they were 0 for 4 and then hit 2.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I added that wrong because that's that Jesuit math, But yes, they started out 0 of 4 and then ended up 2 of 6. But for a while, it was like a neon sign in Vegas to see that they were 0% from the free throw line. So It was wild. But yeah, I thought the Billikens handled this really well. Very businesslike. Fred Thatch was, outstanding.
He was.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of game I don't know. He was just fantastic. I don't really have much to say. What did you see from the actual?
The other thing I saw from SLU specifically was just, well, you already mentioned Perkins and what he was doing. That was about the most efficient game I've seen out of him. I mean, it was this year. He had 19 points in 22 minutes, 8 of 10 from the field, and 3 of 4 from 3. He was just an assassin. There are games where Perkins kind of panics a little bit. And
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we will. And sometimes his shot selection can suffer, and he forgets that he can get himself out of trouble by passing or putting it on the floor. But this game, he just was. We got to go to the analytics guys, the M&G analytics guys, to see how many dribbles he scored those 19 on, because I'm guessing it's less than 6. He was just really smooth and quick to score last night. The other real standout to me was obviously Goodwin, who had 16, 15, and 8. Just a monster game from him. He added 2 steals with that as well, and he was 3 for 3 from the free throw line. But it wasn't just the stats. I mean, he controlled the game in every way possible. With Yuri Collins on the bench, he really stepped up and played a fantastic game, arguably his best of the season. And then just to round out the seniors, it wasn't French's biggest production night, but I thought his first half was just about perfect.
It was.
Except for the free throws. And we didn't really need him much in the second half. He played 22 minutes on the game. And I thought that was his 3rd game in a row where he really looked like his old self and that he was back. So 3rd game in a row where all 3 of our seniors played really well together.
I want to ask you, what was your reaction to Yuri Callan's going down in that first half?
Well,
I was terrified.
Well, he went down in the Fordham game, though, right?
Oh no, wait.
So he didn't.
You're right. I'm completely.
Yeah,
wait. No, he went down in the. Where are we?
So he went down in the Fordham game, and Ford gave him this game off. So Goodwin.
You're right.
Goodwin
my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm thinking about the Rhode Island game. I'm all the way back in the Rhode Island. Oh my God. Yeah. Took a time machine. Where's Doc Brown? But no, I thought. Is there anybody more efficient? I love Perkins, and Perkins is unfreaking believable when he gets on a roll. But is there anybody more efficient in recent memory in a Billiken uniform than Martin Linson?
I mean, I guess maybe there's some walk-on who went 1 for 1 or something.
Reggie Becko from the 3-point line.
As long as you're keeping it to a production minimum.
Yeah.
This was another game where he came in and gave great energy and did everything that's asked of him. And just another game, 3 for 3. 2 of 2 from the line. In 10 minutes, you've got 8 points. 3 assists was the other thing that stood out to me for him. Yeah. He knew when to pass in this one, and it was the 4th straight game we've seen our bigs really pass well.
Yeah, you mentioned holding their big scorers, or their most of their guys to low point totals. Christian Ray only had 4. Sharif Kenny didn't score. Anwar Gill, 5 points. David Beatty only had Anwar Gill had 7. David Beatty only had 5, and he killed us the last game. They mentioned Tegra Izay and Jared Kimbrough, who both scored 2 total points. And they only played 33 minutes between the two. So this was a weird game. Ashley Howard handled his roster really interestingly, and but the Billikens took advantage, and it was a good home win. It was a fun game to just kind of, like I said, it's kind of like the Fordham game. You sit back and enjoy.
Yeah, it was great. It was just like you said, just an enjoyable win from start to finish. Really, really refreshing game, and it was the 4th straight game where we were playing some great basketball.
And we're gonna turn the page onto some less cheery news or less cheery talk, if you will. The Billikens, Friday night, 7 p.m. at UD Arena. They took on the Dayton Flyers, and they were making omelets because they laid a lot of eggs in this one.
This was
53 loss, and it was never close.
No, it wasn't. Almost immediately, Dayton got on the board. They were getting some good looks on the offensive end, and then just frustrated SLU out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the narrative that has emerged in this one is they kind of challenged Jimerson and Perkins to shoot, and they did miss some open shots early, and then it almost seemed like panic kind of set in offensively. I don't know if I buy that completely because there's a lot more we do offensively, but they did kind of pack it in on us, especially in the first half. And then they go down and they get nothing but open looks and hit at the other end. So the one thing, they seem to always have open shooters on their end because they just their spacing is really good. Their ball movement is good. And I think the other factor in this one is that Chapman was back from injury. I don't think he was there last time we played them.
No.
So they always seem to have the open man on offense. And then on defense, they just guard us so well without overhelping. It just seems like we never had anyone who was truly open or who had room to operate. What did you see in this one?
Man, I mean, it just felt like it was bad decision after bad decision. Really don't even know what to say as far as like on court, because it felt like everything was being forced. I felt like Hassan French was kind of the scapegoat when it came to forcing things. Did you feel the same way?
The scapegoat in terms of
being that guy who's the one that's making the worst decisions, I guess.
Well, I mean, he had plenty of company.
Right.
I
agree.
Yeah.
But like it was just one of those that where like he was the first one that he was kind of the one that was most obvious, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, they were forcing him into heavily contested shots at the rim. They were forcing him into turnovers. Just clearly had his number. I want to say last time we played them, he got their big man Jordy into some foul trouble early, and that kind of helped us. But that wasn't the case in this one. They just seemed to have the upper hand immediately. And French had 4 turnovers. He did make some nice passes, but he got into a little bit of foul trouble as well. Something he hadn't done during the 3 previous games. When we were streaking, he was staying out of foul trouble. So just not a good 18 minutes from him at all. But like I said, he had plenty of company. Goodwin's decision-making was not great. I think everyone got baited into a turnover or two. It was just hard to watch.
Yeah. I think I texted you at halftime and said, F it. I'm going to just go do whatever I want to. I'm done watching this. But I want to get into the post-game comments because that was something you pointed out to me. I have trouble reading and looking into things after a loss, but it's hard. I think I put too much emotional energy into things at times, and I think it's a problem when you're a podcaster. Goodwin. Quote, I told them you can't forget anything like this. I actually told them to soak it in, take a bath in it. This feeling sucks when you get beat to sleep anywhere. So I told them to channel that and go forward from here. But don't forget what it feels like because we might see them in a few weeks. We've got Hargrove. It wasn't just us. It wasn't our defense the way we usually play. I don't have an answer for that. Ford said, they did a great job on us. We kind of knew what they were going to do, and we didn't do much on either end. One more Goodwin quote. I feel like we were ready. I feel like every time we got off to a slow start, it goes downhill from there. I thought Coach had a good game plan, but the players as a whole did not follow it at all.
So the two things that stand out to me there are both Goodwin and Hargrove. Instead of saying we need to move on, they both say we need to wallow in this one for a little bit. We need to feel this pain. We need to learn from this, which is, I think, kind of a unique approach, because most athletes, I know they don't say a whole lot in press conferences of note, but most will say we want to just move on. And they kind of took the opposite approach on this one, which I thought was interesting. So I hope they really do mean that, because this was not the same team that had played the previous 4 games. And then the other thing that stood out to me was Goodwin's last quote there, where he said, we scouted them well. We had a good game plan. We just didn't execute. You hear coaches say that a lot. So I would be curious to prod Goodwin a little bit more on that and kind of see specifically what he meant, because they looked out of sync in every single way. They looked panicked. They looked like they were frustrated. It was just like a complete meltdown is what it felt like to me. And I don't know how much of that goes to Ford, because when you do see those signs, I mean, really in the first couple minutes of the game,
you could tell it was
you instead of just saying, oh, this is who we are today, I feel like there had to be a way to get them back in it. There was a point in the first half where we were down by 6. It was 19-13. And I remember thinking, like, we're down. We've been playing horrible. The worst I've seen us play all year. It's 19-13, so this is really a couple possessions away from being either, a 1 or 2 point game or a tied game. Like, this is not out of hand. And then within a few minutes, it was like 31-15 Dayton, and it basically was out of hand. And it was clear we weren't going to come back.
Yeah, it was frustrating. Gosh, it's hard to get on here and just be kind of level-headed, because it was so frustrating. You mentioned the scout and whether we scouted them correctly. Last year, we learned last year that it's the first chair who has the scout. Last year was Giacoletti who had both Dayton games, and this year it was Tate. So the question is, why switch? I'm not saying Tate's the wrong person to scout, but I'm curious as why the switch. Now, I know you have no idea, but what do you think? It's a mistake to switch? Talk to me, man. Chat me up.
Well, I mean, the staff, they're around each other all day, every day. It's not like there's a completely different set of ideas among every assistant coach about how to approach a game. And it's not like anyone's new or having to learn Dayton. Dayton is different than they were last year. Obviously, they're nowhere near as good. You lose Toppin, you lose some other players, and you're not going to be a 29-2 team again. So obviously there were some changes there, and some differences on our roster as well, mostly for the positive. So I don't think switching it is a huge deal. I'm trying to remember back to my days, but I think the assistants, like, once they had somebody, like whoever had Marquette, they were going to have Marquette every year. I think that's how Soderberg worked it. I was only there for 1 year of Romar, so I can't really speak to it under him. But Dayton clearly has our number this season. I don't know what it is, because last season no complaints about SLU's approach to the game at all. Both games we were in until the end. We had a chance to win against one of the best teams in the country. That just so happens to be our rival. This season, Dayton's nowhere near as good, and it's not a matter of playing down to your competition. They're still a good team. They're not Fordham. It's just a matter of not having an answer for their perimeter shooting, and they just completely have our number on defense.
Yeah, that leads us to, I guess, the questions we got on Twitter. We put it out there, and I want to thank all of our friends and listeners that did reply to our tweet and with questions, and some of our enemies that actually replied too. And I'll allow Ghost Make History on the podcast. I'll allow his question. Does Dayton have SLU's number, or is there a bigger problem here?
I would say this season, yeah, they do. Clearly, there's something that they're doing to approach this game that SLU has not figured out. does Dayton have our number in general? I've seen a lot of people say, oh, Dayton owns SLU. I mean, last season was extraordinary for them. So having a down year against them this year, it means we've lost 4 in a row against them. It's kind of back and forth for a few years before that. During the Cruz years, I think we lost in the first season or two under Ford, we did have a 7-game losing streak to them. But then before that, we won 7 of 9 against them when Majerus was around. So in general, do they have our number? No. This season, do they? Yeah. I don't know why. What do you think?
At times, I think there's a bigger problem. I don't know what it is, but it feels like sometimes this team loses its poise, maybe some faith in its leadership. I can't put my finger on it. I don't have the pulse of this team intimately, so I can't prove my thoughts on that. But it just seems like at times this team may not be as mentally tough as you'd like to see. The team that won 4 games in 4 days and went to the NCAA tournament. You don't see the mental toughness to come back and the resiliency that like the Blues talked about in their cup run. You don't see that kind of resiliency with this team. And it scares me. It makes me nervous. And I question the tough skin on this team. I don't know if they have that, kind of attitude, like nobody's going to fuck with us.
Yeah. It's really hard to explain. I think, I look at our seniors and
I want more.
Yeah. Well, it's just the inconsistency that I don't understand. Like how do you look so good, so sharp, so ready in one game, and then 3 days later you just don't even show
100%. up. Yeah, 100%.
And this is, by the way, the things that are happening externally before this Dayton game is in the 24 hours leading up to the game, the league has basically said, hey, SLU, we're going to give you every possible avenue to the NCAA tournament. We're going to give you a better game to finish the season. We're going to change seeding that basically gives you a 2 seed right now into the A-10 tournament. So all you have to do is win some games and you're in. And SLU just went, we're good. I mean, like the players know that, the coaches know that. So I don't know how that isn't a motivator for this game, because knowing that going into this game, I go, well, this is it. We're about to punch our ticket. We just need to take care of business. Yeah.
Another question from Mike. At what point do you have to start severely limiting French's minutes? It's obvious COVID has had a lasting effect on him. He's not the same player.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot we don't know about COVID and its long-term effects and things like that. I know some people have speculated how it's affected big men more than some other players on a basketball roster. So I don't know. I mean, he does look slower. He doesn't look as lean as he did last season.
He doesn't. You're right. Neither does Fred.
No, yeah, but this is one of those things where he was actually really good. He was every bit as good as he's been throughout his career. In the last 3 games leading up to this one.
Right.
2 of those were LaSalle and Fordham, but he was good against Rhode Island too, and Rhode Island has some really nice bigs. So in terms of limiting his minutes, I think I'm still, if I'm Ford, he's still a starter. He's still your big man. You still go with him. It's more situational, and I think I'd use him pretty sparingly down the stretch when you're talking about things like I'd be pulling him out on offense every time that we have the ball for an inbound under, for example, or an inbound anywhere, just because you don't want to risk him having to shoot free throws late in the second half. Things like that. I still think you got to go with him overall, though, if he's not in foul trouble. I don't know. What about you? Do you think we need to pull the plug on him sooner?
I mean,
keep him on a shorter leash, I should say.
Yeah. Both of these seniors just frustrate me in general because it just does not feel like they're present at times. French especially is kind of I don't know. I think it's been rumor and innuendo speculated that French is kind of checked out, and it worries me. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's a legitimate concern, but I just French is not the same player, and I don't know if it's COVID. I don't know if it has to do with conditioning. It's scary, and I don't want to say scary because we overuse. It's concerning for sure when it comes to this team.
Yeah, and seniors can check out. I definitely, my senior year, I saw that with the seniors there. At the time, it was Isaac Ohanon, Reggie Bryant, Tom Frericks. I think they were all three seniors that year.
Well, Reggie had a hell of a senior year personally. So.
He did. Like they were all battling injuries all year, but that was a season where we lost a lot of close games and we ended up winning 9. We were like 9-21 to finish the year. But it shows you how fine a line a season is, because we were like 1-12 in close games. But by the end of the year, everybody was just like, we're packing it in. We're not going to get hurt anymore. So I've seen that. It should not happen on a team that's in tournament contention now. Like the guys, you should be able to stay focused for just a couple more months if you're a senior who actually can play in a postseason. Because think about, I don't like when players are worried about their legacy while they're still playing, thinking too much about that. But if you're Goodwin and French and you're now about to wrap up your career, there's a very real chance that all they have to show for their whole career at SLU in terms of wins is one NCAA tournament appearance that was over as soon as it started.
Yeah.
And that's got to be hard for fans to think about now. Wow, we just had 2 of the best Billikens ever, and we don't even have a tournament win. So what more motivation, do you need if you're those guys?
Yeah, that's the real kicker. That's the real kick in the ass for fans, I think, is that you go into Dayton, you have a chance to spoil Jalen Crutcher's senior day.
Oh, yeah.
You have seniors who this is their last chance to make their mark at St. Louis University, and it's a no-show. They just absolutely lay an egg, and it's one of the worst games I've seen under Travis Ford. I don't even know what else to say. I don't want to get too hyperbolic, but I was pissed off. Like, I was legitimately angry, and there's no reason to be angry for like a real human being, like a person who has actual like priorities. But like as a sports fan and a Billiken fan, it pissed me off.
Yeah, for sure.
Looking at the standings right now, VCU hanging out in front, 9-3 in conference. Davidson and UMass both sit at 6-2. UMass kind of a funny situation with them with the schedule they've played. Like we mentioned in the outset, that they will be back off pause here soon. Bonaventure 8-3, Richmond 5-3, Dayton sits at 8-6, St. Louis 4-3 in 7th place, and then you have George Mason, Duquesne, George Washington, Rhode Island, LaSalle, Fordham. St. Joseph's finally gets a win, which I will mention in our recap of the week, but they sit in last place. Speaking of the recap of the week, 2-16, St. Louis beat LaSalle by 13, 78-57. VCU beat Richmond by 13 as well. Or actually, they just beat them by 13, 68-56. Joe's and GW was postponed. Duquesne and George Washington also postponed. That was like they replaced the game and then they postponed the second game. Weird. Bonaventure and George Mason, I believe, was postponed as well. The 19th, SLU lost to UD, as we know. Davidson beat the tar out of some slack Division III team by 50.
Southern Virginia.
Yeah,
D3.
Southern Virginia.
Yeah.
SVU, not the SVU the Billiken fans have come to know, right? Not
no sweater vest there.
Not Sweater Vest University. The Joes beat LaSalle by 9, 91-82. George Mason went into VCU and win 79-76. Richmond holds serve at home 79-71 over Duquesne. And today, URI and Davidson and St. Bonaventure played. I don't have the scores on that in front of me. I apologize.
Yeah. So George Washington, this is their first game. They had a COVID layoff basically as long as ours. This is their first game since the 19th of January, and they wound up beating Rhode Island by 8, which sort of kills the narrative for a lot of the other teams that, hey, give us a break on these first games back. Because Bishop had 28, Battle had 26. They were apparently ready to go.
It's funny because I don't think there's anybody better in the Atlantic 10 than saying they screwed up on their scout than David Cox. Like, this is like the third time in a row he's blamed his scout on losing, and it's hysterical. And I guess the next game is played later tonight, right?
Yeah, Davidson and Montreal played yet.
Yeah. Billiken fans, we've got a treat for you today with Richmond coming up on the schedule. We've got Noah Goldberg, who reports for ESPN Richmond. He reports on the Richmond Spiders. He's locked into that program. Noah, good to have you on the podcast, my man.
Appreciate you having me on, Zach. Excited to get going.
Yeah, welcome to the new and improved Midtown Madness podcast with me and Peter. So I guess we'll get right to it because it was the biggest story in the A10 for a week. It was the COVID drama saga, whatever you want to call it, between the Billiken Athletic Department and Billiken men's basketball program, and it was a war of words in the media between the two athletic departments. So give me kind of the rundown of that entire weekend from where you stood.
Yeah, it was a super weird weekend, even for me in particular, even more so than other media, because we also I'm obviously a student at U of R, and there were issues going on campus with COVID unrelated to the basketball team that was affecting.
Expound on that for us.
Yeah. So I'm an off-campus student at U of R. I'm a junior, so I live in an apartment like 3 minutes from campus. And when all the students came back for the spring semester, they do like initial COVID testing. So everyone gets tested right away with, I think, the PCR tests, like the better ones. And then after that, every student gets tested like every other week, prevalence testing. So when we all came back, off-campus students had a 17% positivity rate on that initial testing, which is pretty high. So U of R basically said, okay, for the next 2 weeks, which included that week of the St. Louis game, if you're an off-campus student, you're not allowed to come to campus at all for anything other than COVID testing and like the health center. So for me, I wasn't really thinking about the basketball game too much. Obviously, Robin Center's on campus. I was thinking, I don't work for the school newspaper. I work for ESPN Richmond. They let student athletes into the Robin Center who live off campus already. They were doing that, so they were making an exception. So I'm like, they're going to let me in. I didn't really think about it. So I actually ended up getting a text from a PR person that said, because of this new policy, we actually can't credential you for the game. So I actually wasn't going to be allowed into the game, which was really, frustrating. It wasn't really their fault. It's an administration decision. It had nothing to do with the athletic department. Their hands were kind of tied. So I was dealing with that. That was a whole separate thing. And then obviously, of course, as you mentioned, there was this kind of like public relations battle of the whole situation that unfolded with SLU and Richmond. So from my perspective and where I was sitting, basically what it sounds like is, St. Louis obviously got to Richmond. They flew in, they landed, they were in a hotel. I want to say they got in, I don't know if they got in Friday or Thursday, but I know that their concerns arose, I believe Thursday night stuff was brought up and conversations were had. Obviously, like I said, SLU was there. And what were
those concerns, as you know?
So I don't know. I don't know specifics of like, was it certain people were positive or certain people were somewhat like, I don't know the specifics exactly what happened. I think is kind of what it sounds like is that obviously we all know what happened publicly, right? SLU's concerned about something, but Richmond did clear protocol. So basically what it sounds like is that either some kind of fringe, I don't know what the tier 1, tier 2 is, whether it's some kind of staff that's not around the team all the time, but someone around or in the programs, I think had positive tests, but weren't part of the traveling party not around the guys all the time. So it's kind of one of those weird things where there's like COVID at the fringe of the program, I guess you could say, but all the players tested negative the day of. And basically, according to the Atlantic 10 protocols, they cleared all the protocols. Everyone in the tier 1 party, whatever it is, was all clear. And obviously St. Louis, whatever those concerns were, or it seems like there were positives around the team, it concerned them enough. And from their perspective, right, like you guys had a super long COVID pause and they can't afford to miss more games. And, Richmond, I understand where they're coming from because, you're Richmond, that's a big game. You need the games. And, if the conference tells you you're clear to play, of course you're going to clear to play. So I don't have issues with Richmond wanting to play if they cleared protocols. And I also don't think anyone should have issues with St. Louis because obviously they were concerned and we know what happened. I think that where the issue comes in is, like you mentioned, right, the PR battle is then Richmond comes out, you get John Hart, you get Chris Mooney, and other guys saying how disappointed they were that
John O'Connor.
And yeah, so I'm not going to say anything directly about J.O.
Sure.
He's a good guy and he's another reporter, but we all know what happened. And that's what killed them is coming out and saying we were disappointed we couldn't play because, and they'll tell you, right, they'll say Friday we cleared protocol. They went into shutdown Sunday, and they say Friday and Sunday are completely unrelated. They say Friday, everyone was fine. Nothing happened Saturday, and that Sunday people tested positive, that they're completely unrelated. No one with a brain is going to believe that, right? If St. Louis literally left over COVID concerns, it was clear that the conference and both teams were being very hush-hush about it.
Yeah.
And then you have an outbreak through your team where a large majority of the roster ended up getting COVID. And so it's like you have to know that those two were related. It's pretty clear that whatever happened on Friday that concerned SLU obviously led to that outbreak Sunday.
So what was the narrative shift with your fan base? Speaking from SLU's perspective, our fans mostly were pretty upset that they walked out on the game when Richmond was saying we cleared conference protocols, we cleared our protocols, we're good to go. A lot of our fans were pretty upset. They were ready for that game. So for almost 48 hours, it was pretty rough in Billiken land. And then it was like total vindication Sunday. And not that everybody who was outraged walked back everything they said, but it was a big shift in the way that our fans certainly looked at it. What was it like in Richmond? I imagine it pretty upset on Friday, but did that change much Sunday, or were they still like, we should have played Friday?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the issue is the messaging, is that basically they still obviously Friday and Saturday, but even kind of Sunday and into that next week, they weren't exactly putting out statements like they were Friday and Saturday where they're going out and advertising that they were annoyed they didn't play. But you still, the team continued to repeat that Sunday is unrelated to Friday, even after stuff happened Sunday, and continue to repeat that we were clear on Friday and we wanted to play Friday. So they certainly didn't walk it back, and they certainly haven't made any kind of admission saying Friday and Sunday were related, which, again, from their standpoint, it's, again, we can all judge. And I think it's like we all said, right? Common sense, we're pretty clear. We think that it's related, but from a PR standpoint, it does them no good at that point. They've already kind of stuck their feet in the mud. So that's where they're at. But yeah, with like the fan base, obviously it was kind of the same with you guys. Friday, Saturday, everyone on Richmond Twitter was ripping apart St. Louis.
Everyone on A10 Twitter was ripping us apart.
It was pretty universal. There were a few voices saying, maybe we did the right thing. Let's wait and see what happens. Give them a break, but not many.
It's really just I don't understand how it went down the way it did. It's just really mind-boggling to me because, again, I can't really get into specifics about what the concerns were that SLU had, but it just, from my perspective, it didn't seem obvious that, like, because of what the concerns were, that there was going to be some kind of COVID outbreak. But it's certainly based on what those concerns were. I feel like anyone with a brain could have thought, okay, it's a possibility with what they were concerned about. Anyone could have guessed there was a potential that Richmond was going to have a COVID issue in the coming days. So for me, it's just like, if I can make that assumption based on the information I have, you've got to think the conference in St. Louis and Richmond, they have all the details and they know everything's going on. So to me, for them to like know what was happening and what those concerns were, and then stick with the messaging and the PR message, because this wasn't like a Richmond versus St. Louis thing. Like, this was the conference. Like, that's why you didn't hear, like, you would have thought like St. Louis maybe would have leaked Friday and Saturday what their concerns were because everyone was ripping them apart, right? And it's clearly like not their fault. So the fact that nothing got out, nothing leaked, like the conference was literally like, I know they were holding Richmond's PR release on Sunday, where like the Richmond was waiting to announce the pause, and like A10 was in constant communication with everyone on both teams. So like this was their show. So it's hard to like really blame St. Louis or Richmond for the messaging, but I do think to a certain degree the conference just, I mean, they fucked up. Like they shouldn't have let anyone said anything. They should have just said they cleared protocols, but we all met and just left it at that. So I really think Bernadette kind of botched this one.
It's interesting you throw it Bernie's way, because I think a lot of people noted the time frame at which Richmond came out and started kind of going on the offensive, because it was in the time frame that SLU would have been in the air heading back to St. Louis. What do you make of just from your perspective, Richmond going on the offensive, and then kind of St. Louis's kind of letting Richmond talk themselves into a grave, if you will?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened. And again, it's mind-boggling. It's such a PR fuck up. Like it really makes no sense to me. I mean, like we said, the conference, it's pretty clear the A10 said to St. Louis, don't say anything. Don't tell them what your concerns were, blah, blah. Because it makes the A10 look bad too, right? Yeah. Like the fact that the A10's protocols clearly are not effective because it's the A10's protocols, and their protocols cleared a team to play. And then that same team had a COVID outbreak days later. So from the A10's perspective, it's just a terrible look for them. And I get why they want everyone to be hush hush. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly what St. Louis did. Like St. Louis knew the situation. They knew that, just like I said, right? Like, again, you couldn't have predicted per se there was going to be a COVID outbreak, but you certainly could have saw the potential. So they probably looked at it and said, stuff's going to come out. We're going to be vindicated. We're just going to sit back and see what happens. So again, I know I just repeated it, but it's just beyond shocking to me with the information that was available to all the parties that Richmond would come out and make the statements they did about being disappointed in that stuff. I mean, it was kind of, from my perspective, it was a ticking time bomb just waiting to happen.
Full disclosure to people listening, and I'm sure anybody who's followed me in my quote unquote antics or my outlets for my creativity, I have a spotty pass at best with the athletic director at St. Louis University. Me and him don't see eye to eye on a lot of business related aspects. I will point out business related aspects. But no, I honestly sat here and enjoyed him putting his quote unquote balls on the chin of Richmond athletic director. I thought it was amazing. I thought he was perfect throughout, but I'm curious because Chris Mooney has had kind of a rocky road the last couple of years, especially with a certain section of the Richmond fan base. You obviously have the Fire Mooney Mafia on Twitter. You had the billboard. Mooney has come out and been somewhat outspoken about the protocols involving COVID and kind of being in questioning how strict protocol should be. Where does the fan base stand on Mooney's outspokenness and his kind of stance on COVID protocols?
I can't really speak on where the fan base is for that, to be honest. I haven't really seen a lot of it. Mm-hmm. It's, everyone's kind of different, right? Like everyone across the political spectrums, different backgrounds, everyone's got a different take on COVID. So I don't think there's a huge like alignment. It's really just the people that hate Mooney are going to rip Mooney for whatever he does. The people that love him are going to ride his dick to death. So it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter, which side you're on. But I will say he's certainly, like you said, he's been, all year pretty, I don't want to say questionable, but he's questioned a lot of the COVID. So we had I don't know if you guys know about the first pause they had. They had 3 pauses. The first one, they came back from their MTE at Kentucky, the Bluegrass Showcase. And they had 3 positive tests. I think they were all the rapid tests, which obviously, as we know, aren't very good. None of the guys were symptomatic. They all isolated, quarantined, and in like 3 consecutive days returned 3 negative tests. So like they were pretty convinced that was a false positive. Like it's pretty clear.
Yeah, a bad
and he basically after then and just through the rest of the year just continuously, I shouldn't say ripped COVID protocols. I know like I'm around the team. Like they have followed COVID protocols as far as I know pretty well, but you've seen basically almost any post-game press conference. It feels like anytime they miss a game, he gets a little frustrated, which is again understandable. It's young, healthy guys who in their opinion probably don't care as much about getting COVID. So yeah, I understand the frustrations, but as far as the fan base goes, I think it's more just whatever your stance on COVID is versus the Chris Mooney thing.
How much, in terms of Richmond's performance versus expectations this year, how much do you put at the feet of COVID versus Mooney or any other factors? And is there a narrative building around any of that? It seems like Mooney sort of underperformed for a while and then beat everybody's expectations last year and more or less saved his job in some people's eyes, and then had them not a consensus number one, but a lot of national pundits has had them number one over SLU as number two heading into this season. And certainly neither team has performed up to expectations. But how much of that do you think belongs is COVID responsible for versus other factors?
Yeah, it's difficult because, like you said, this has been a narrative that's been going for years. You've had the whole Fire Mooney Mafia, and like you said, what happened last year, they overperformed second in the conference. So it's hard to always use COVID as a crutch for them because, at the end of the day, they did lose Nick Sherrod for the whole year. Like, that's not insignificant. That guy led the entire conference in 3-point shooting. So from a floor space perspective, you lose him. They've been without Connor Crabtree, who's their best offensive player off the bench. No, Connor Crabtree, he was a Tulane transfer.
I'm messing with you. Sorry.
So again, like, those aren't insignificant losses. And then, like we said, 3 COVID pauses, that's really hard to deal with. You guys, St. Louis, like, you came out and lost to Dayton, you lost to LaSalle off the COVID pause. Like, we know the data's out. I mean, when teams come off these pauses, like, hey, we lost to LaSalle too off a COVID pause. So we can all cry together. But
yes,
it's the data's out. So it's like, again, you can't ignore that, right? Like, you have to admit, like, yes, COVID is making it difficult. But at the same time, every team's in this situation, and to a certain degree, it is in your control. VCU's only been paused one day this entire season. So is it an explanation for why this team may be underperforming? Yes. Is it an excuse? Still probably not. I mean, at the end of the day, LaSalle's LaSalle. Like, you shouldn't be losing to LaSalle if you're the preseason favorite. Like, at the end of the day, that's just what the story is.
Show some respect for the only fans, man.
It's just the inconsistency with this team. That's what the thing is. And so how much do I blame COVID for this? I mean, COVID's probably exacerbated weaknesses and issues that were already existing within this team. I just think it's exposed them more. So I don't know. I feel for Chris Mooney because really everything's gone wrong for them that wasn't in their control, but they've also fucked up a lot of things that have been in their control as well.
I want to talk, and I don't know, and I know you've kind of sidestepped for good reason. The John Hart, John O'Connor, Chris Mooney relationship. But it really, I think Peter and I, while watching John O'Connor continuously defend Richmond's position on the pause, being that we spent time in St. Louis. I mean, I live in St. Louis. He spent a good portion of his early life and college career in St. Louis. There's not a single journalist in St. Louis that would hold the kind of water that John O'Connor would, or that John O'Connor did for Chris Mooney and John Hart in the days after the cancellation. So kind of run us through your take on how that relationship works, because it is mind-blowing. Like, we would get, like, Chris May, Travis Ford, anybody in St. Louis University would get crucified in the Post-Dispatch for what happened. But even up until, 2 weeks later, John O'Connor was still defending the position. So run us through the relationship there between John O'Connor and who he writes for and kind of the athletic department. Because I think we kind of missed that in St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm not, again, sidestepping. I'm not really going to speak on
I get it. No, I get it. I get it. It's, I'm not trying to gotcha here. I'm curious of this, that whole dynamic. It's wild for us.
Yeah. And again, I don't know. I can't say specifically, I'm not going to have a take on John and how he does his journalism. Sure. He's been there for many years. But what I will say is that, it's a different market, right? Like, the reason I've been able to become a pretty prominent voice in this market in 2.5 years. Like I didn't know who Chris Mooney was 3 years ago, right? And like now it's like I think it's fair to say that like I'm probably up there with JOC of who you think about with Richmond media. And the reason I was able to do that is because it's a small market, right? Like when I got here,
Sure.
like John O'Connor is the only. There's other guys like some guys from local TV stations that are at games here and there, like Sean Robertson, Mark Davis, are all at most of the games. But in terms of like a beat reporter and guys that are literally there covering everything and everything that happens, like John O'Connor's literally been the only guy. So, when you're in a market like that and you haven't had that much competition, you've been there forever, you went to the school, like, yeah, you're going to have a pretty probably close relationship with the people because he's there. I mean, he's been talking to John Hart since he's, been hired here. So again, like defending him wise, I don't know. Like, again, it's when you don't really have any competition, it's like John O'Connor's not going to get fired for any take he has because he's the only guy. So again, I can't really speak on, if you want to say he was defending them or whatnot, I'm not really going to speak on that. But when you have a relationship with someone like that, it's a small market.
No, you answered my question beautifully. Thank you. No, that was exactly kind of what I was curious about. But looking forward to the game on, is it Friday? I think SLU plays. Yeah, I think it's Friday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, what have you seen from Richmond this season? Give me 3 things to look out for with this Richmond team that the average Billiken fan that maybe isn't watching Richmond on ESPN Plus every other weekend. Give us 3 things to look out for with this Richmond team.
Yeah. So I kind of leading up to this, I went back and read my recap from the St. Louis game, Richmond game last year, kind of see how like things have changed since then. And, both these teams are pretty similar to last year, but with a few, minor differences. Obviously, Gibson Jimerson didn't have him last year. And, for Richmond, right, Nick Sherrod's gone, but Tyler Burton's in the starting lineup. So if you want to look back to that, those are basically the 2 main differences I think that you look at. I would say for this Richmond team, it's super cliche, and I feel like I say this on every podcast, but for them, it's really hitting shots and being consistent. Like when they lost to you guys last year in Richmond, I think they were 4 of 21 from 3 against VCU the other night. They were missing a ton of open looks. So for them, it's really just, especially a guy like Blake Francis, where he's such a volume scorer, takes a lot of mid-range shots, a lot of contested shots, and it's frustrating at times, but the thing is when he makes them, they can, beat almost anyone. And in that game in particular, I think he was 1 of 8 from 3. I can go back and check that in that St. Louis Richmond matchup last year. So again, it just shows like they really just have to hit shots. So that's one thing that they definitely have to look out for. Turnovers. This team is one of the best at not turning the ball over. And, the VCU game on Wednesday was kind of an enigma where I think they only had 6 turnovers in that whole game and still lost. But again, that was just more of a product of not hitting shots again. So for them, I think that's the biggest thing. And that was, again, going back to that game last year, Richmond had a 6-15 assist to turnover ratio against St. Louis last season. That was their worst mark by far of that season. They were top 25 going into the game in the country in that category. So, and you guys, obviously, Yuri Collins just came back off injury. That's a guy that can really get after you and pick your pocket. Same with Jordan Goodwin. And really this year, Richmond, I think even more than last year, defensively has been exposed for the shortness, the lack of height of their guards, which is the opposite problem for St. Louis outside of Yuri Collins. So just from a defensive standpoint, I mean, they're a team that's built on not turning the ball over. They didn't do it very well against St. Louis last time. So if you're Richmond, really, you've really got to take care of the ball in this one against St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. Obviously, every game scares me given what we just watched on Friday night.
Me too, man.
Yeah. Pete, do you have any questions for Mr. Goldberg?
Yeah, I'm curious about Golden. What kind of a factor do you see him being on Friday? I feel like anytime I've seen him lately, he doesn't quite look like himself.
Somebody mentioned that to me too. It's funny you say that because it's really good. Funny you say that because somebody said I was like Golden's good, and they're like not anymore. I was like, oh okay. But finish. I'm sorry, Peter. I just wanted to.
Well, that's my question. I mean, you talked about the guards and needing to shoot, and I see how poorly Richmond shot against VCU the other night. 3 of 19 from downtown, and 20 for 61 overall. But where's Golden factor into this this larger narrative?
Yeah, well, that's a big reason why I'm scared of this game on Friday, because Grant did not have a good game against St. Louis last year. I think he was 3-11 from the field. He really did not do that much, and I think that when you guys went with the two big starting lineup, when I think you started Jimmy Bell in that game,
Mm-hmm.
but no, maybe he started most games, but he played a lot more than usual. He played like upwards of 20 minutes in that game alongside Hassan French. I think that gave Grant a lot of trouble in the post. And against Duquesne, whereas kind of similar to SLU, just in the way of Michael Hughes, really big, physical, strong. They kill you on the offensive glass. And this, yesterday, Saturday night, against Duquesne, Michael Hughes, I want to say Duquesne had 11 offensive rebounds, and really in the last like 8 minutes or so, Michael Hughes dropped 20 points. Like he was just grabbing everything in the offensive glass. I'm nervous St. Louis could do the same thing. When you want to talk about Grant Golden, he had an okay game on Saturday. He had 10 points, but 8 rebounds, 8 assists. But yeah, when you guys talk about him not looking himself, I think if there's a guy that's been the most affected by COVID this season, it's been him. For him, this conditioning has been a big thing, kind of over his career. And I think what really let him take off last year on the defensive end specifically, there were two things. A, he dropped some weight, so he got in better shape in general. And his minutes also went down, because people forget their sophomore year, they had no depth. He was playing upwards of 30 minutes a game, really hard as a big man. So for him, the on and off, and especially this most recent COVID pause where it was 19 days, I think he really was just out of shape over these last couple games. He just moves with heavy feet. And he's a guy that's so active, like you guys talk about. He's up in the high post, he's passing out of it, setting screens, like he's just moving all over the floor. So yeah, for him, this is a team where St. Louis is the worst matchup for Grant Golden in history. I mean, he's not a physical guy. He's a finesse type of center. He's a point center. So yeah, he has not looked himself lately, although albeit again a decent game Saturday night. So if I was St. Louis, I would try to play bully ball with Grant Golden, and until Richmond proves that they can step up and do anything about it, I would just keep going after that.
Yeah, that worked last season for sure. And you mentioned shooting and turnovers. Those are definitely two things I remember from Richmond last year. Is they missed wide open looks. It's not like we were hounding them on the perimeter. They did miss a lot of shots that you make even 3 of those, and it could have been a different game. So definitely something to look out for. Anything can happen on Friday for sure.
Yeah, and kind of a weird thing with Richmond too is I was on KenPom today, and again, this is for this season, but it kind of applies to last year too. If you watch their games, they're really, for whatever reason, they shoot a lot worse at home. It really makes no sense. But like I saw a KenPom stat today because I saw this looking at St. Louis, and then I went and looked at Richmond. KenPom estimates St. Louis, I don't know however they use their scale, but essentially has the 15th best home court advantage just based on whatever metrics they use. I went and looked at Richmond's. Richmond was like 201st in Division I home court advantage. They really don't shoot the ball that well at home. Obviously, that game was at home last year. This time they're going to St. Louis. Again, like lost to LaSalle at home this year, lost to Hofstra at home this year. Both games didn't really hit shots. So I am just interested to see like if they come out and, just are draining threes, in St. Louis. I don't know if that's going to affect it or not. And I tend to think these things are just kind of random coincidences, but it's really tough because it's now 2 straight years where Richmond honestly just shoots a lot better away from home, which is pretty unusual.
I have 3 more questions. One being a question because we couldn't get another stupid podcast on our show to preview the next game. But first 2 questions are, what's the X factor going into this game between Billikens and Richmond? And then I would like your prediction.
Yeah. So I think for my X factor, it's really Tyler Burton in this one, because he's so uber talented. He's a double threat any night, but again, he's a sophomore. The rest of the starting lineup are seniors, so that's going to be like the most volatile guy of, is he going to give it to you tonight or not? He really struggled against VC Wednesday. He turned it up a little bit on Saturday, and he actually in that game last year against St. Louis, he got like 14 minutes in that game, and in that first half when Grant was really getting pushed around in the paint, they brought Tyler in, and he really gave him a spark. I remember he like pinned a block against the backboard there. He was flying all over the glass. So, when you're playing a team like St. Louis that's so good on the glass and so physical, that's a guy that really needs to step up. And again, he's actually been a good 3-point shooter this year, not at the volume Nick Sherrod was, but he's been a solid 3-point shooter. And when you're Richmond and your guards are just so short, and St. Louis is just so lengthy and just flies around the court defensively, when you have a guy that's 6'7", like Tyler Burton, that can shoot threes, and your two guards are struggling, he's going to be the guy that can get his shots off better than anyone. So it's just a matter of, does he hit them? So I think for me, for this game on Friday, I really think we need a big game out of Tyler. Prediction wise, quite honestly, I don't feel great about this one. I really think it's going to be like a 68-60 St. Louis win. I would say like that. But again, I think if Richmond comes out firing and they're just looking really smooth and hitting their jumpers, I think it could be a lot closer.
I've had a discussion with every podcaster I've interviewed with in the A10 that I think if all the A10 podcasters put their heads together, we could take Vegas for a lot of money. We could just be like, we all just collectively decide who's going to win a game and by what margin. And then just everybody bets like $50 on that game. And then if we figure out if we've got it down, like we can make it a bunch of.
See, you're talking to the wrong guy. I love to give gambling advice. I don't gamble because I really suck at it. I'm really bad. The only one I hit is I gave to my buddy. It was Richmond -5 first half against Duquesne on Saturday, and they were up 7 at the half, and then Blake Francis with last possession. It's like 15 seconds on the clock before the half. Blake is just dribbling at the top. Michael Hughes, the center, comes up and steals the ball from Blake, your shooting guard, runs the court in transition, and then somehow they go get back on defense and they keep it at 7. But it was like, in that moment, it's like, oh my God, they literally almost just backdoor covered this. And Blake Francis just turned it over to a center. So if you want to get gambling luck, don't get it for me, because I literally almost just lost on a center stripping a guard. So
I have a good friend who played a sport at SLU. I won't say what sport, because it'll give it away. But he'll text me like a game, and most of the time VCU's involved. And so I sent him the picture of Vontae Mack no matter what, but I crossed it out and just put VCU no matter what. I don't care what you ask me, just VCU is going to cover. But that leads to me to my next question, because the VCU podcast doesn't apparently want to deal with us on. Give us you're in Richmond. Richmond just played VCU. What can Billiken fans expect Tuesday night against VCU, which they have our game at 5 Central Time, which is an abomination?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously the big question, right, is Bones Hyland's health. It looks like he had a leg injury, and I know against Richmond he didn't play his normal minutes. He actually sat a lot in the first half and had a great game. Scored 20 points on 7 of 12, but that was a game where he was also dealing with a knee injury. So I don't know if that's the same. I didn't follow it too closely this weekend, so I don't know if the knee he was dealing with last week is the same injury as this. I'm guessing it was. But I mean, it was significant. I think Rhodes said leading up to the Richmond game, he had not practiced the entire week, literally hadn't practiced. And then the day of was I feel good, I'm going to go. So obviously that's a big question mark, right? If Bones Hyland doesn't play, I would be shocked if St. Louis lost that game. If he does, I mean, you know what you're going to get with VCU. I mean, they fly around, they run the havoc defense. They're super aggressive. They make you turn the ball over more than anyone else in the conference. So, if you're St. Louis, Yuri Collins really just needs to take care of the ball really well. They are strong, even though they don't have one big man, and Marcus Santos Silva obviously left. He wasn't tall, but he played like he was 6'10". So they kind of will guard you by committee in the paint with guys like Hassan Ward and, Levi Stockard. So they can play physical, and they will run with you if you're St. Louis. But again, I do think that's another matchup where you'd really look for Hassan French. And quite honestly, from a defensive standpoint, even though they fly around as a team, I don't think they really have anyone that can guard Jordan Goodwin all that well. He's just so tall, and I just don't see, especially if you got to switch and you switch Ace Baldwin onto him instead of Bones, Jordan Goodwin should take Ace Baldwin to the rim every single time.
Noah, man, I really appreciate you coming on our show. You've been an amazing guest, and you've provided, I think, our Billiken fans. I won't say our fans, because that's egotistical, man. To our fan. Now it's Billiken fans. You've provided them with a ton of information. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your Sunday to hang with us. Let everybody know where they can find you on social media and on multimedia, for that matter.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Come on, it's Sunday. Like I'm not doing homework. Like you guys know, I have nothing to do
Atta
today.
baby.
Um,
Neither of us
no,
are doing
so
homework either. I've been out of homework for almost 10 years now. So he's been out
Longer
for
than
my,
that.
yep.
More than 15 now.
Atta boy.
getting close. We're nearing the finish line though, so I'm almost with you guys. But yeah, so y'all you guys can follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm doing most of the reporting at Noah Goldberg 10. We do the Spider Scoop podcast with ESPN Richmond. So anyone who wants to listen to me ramble on some more about Spider basketball can go check that out on pretty much any platform.
But before you go, there's a video that's kind of in Billikens.com lore of Billiken Spider highlights, and there's a guy that's like shooting the video from like the corner of the arena, and he's the Spotters. Have you seen this video, or do you know who this guy is? I'm just
I
curious.
don't think so.
Okay, never mind then. But I'll send you the link, but it was like a huge meme on the Billikens board like 10 years ago. Super deep cut. Among the message board morons over there at Billikens.com. But Noah, I can't thank you enough, brother. You've been great on the show, and I hope you're doing well and staying healthy and, both physically and mentally, because it's fucking crazy out here.
It is. Same to you guys, man. I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thanks.
Be good, gentlemen.
Yep. Let's move over to the women's side. A lot of fun stuff going on with Lisa Stone's squad. I'll skim over the first game. We talked about it a little bit on the pod last week because I was watching it while we were recording. The Billikens pulled out a win against Richmond, who had been nipping at their heels in the standings. They win. It was 62-57 at home. And then they went to Dayton. They were at Dayton the same time as the men's team. Perhaps they felt some sense of revenge going in there, not only for themselves but for the men's team. And they pull off a 64-57 win at Dayton. I believe this is the first time SLU has won at Dayton. I tweeted it out, and I don't even remember the time, but I believe it's been since like 2016.
I don't know if that one even came against SLU. I think it was UD's first A10 home loss since 2016. I know that much.
They were on like a 36-game streak.
Yeah.
So and we talked about this a lot on the last podcast, that this was something that Lisa Stone had to prove she could do.
They had a nice 4-game win streak going into this week, and they had 2 big opportunities. And they made a statement in both of them. That Richmond game, like you said, Richmond was nipping at their heels, and that was a big one to win. I felt really good. 5th win in a row. You get big games out of Harbison, Flowers, and Kent.
Flowers, man. Flowers finally played with that fire in her belly that I've been looking for.
She's been awesome.
When she plays with passion and fire, I mean, there was a point in that game where she might have broken skin on her hands clapping at the bench. She was on fire emotionally. She was playing with passion, with fire. She was outstanding in this game. She's scoring, she's rebounding, she's blocking shots. She's done everything in this win streak. She's been great. The freshman Flowers is back. That's right. Yeah, now we're seeing all that potential. The win at Dayton's huge, though. I mean, there's the first place team. There's the team that no one else in conference can beat. Flowers, again, 19-16. Harbison and Clark each have 14. And for the second game in a row, it's all about their defense. They held Richmond. Yeah, they held Richmond to a horrible shooting game. And then in this one, UD goes 30% from the field and 30% from 3. The really funny thing here is they wound up, even though Flowers had a good rebounding game, SLU on the whole didn't, because Dayton was up with 24 offensive rebounds. Magassa had 19 herself. Yeah, they just can't – yeah, that's crazy. They can't convert anything in that game. It was just I imagine it was a really frustrating game for them. But that's
I think the story here for me is the defense has really been the cause of this win streak.
Yeah, when you watch women's basketball, it's interesting. I like watching women's basketball more than most people. But the tough thing when you watch is to try to figure out whether